Just to give you guys a taste of what you should expect in this episode, I talk about human racism. I talk about shades of human colors, and finally I get to some devastating conclusions. Without any further ado, please join me for this episode about prejudice and biases. Welcome to Galaxy Adventure Show. I'm your host, Zongar. I've gone to many planets, and every season I choose a planet in our galaxy in which contains intelligent life. After many seasons, and due to your many requests, we are finally here on Earth. Please join me in my adventures where we meet Earthlings, the so-called intelligent inhabitants of the planet Earth, and we learn more about them. Without any further ado, I give you Earth. This episode, racism, bigotry, and bias. Before traveling to Earth, I try to familiarize myself to humans and their culture by watching their television programs. And I was very disturbed when I found out about prejudices humans have towards one another. As I'm a firm believer of science and scientific methods in terms of accuracy and reliability, I turned to Earthlings' study of prejudice. I came across arguably one of the best machines in studying the brain in Earthlings' disposal, which is called fMRI, and is used for neuroimaging. With the help of neuroimaging, humans were able to map out the brain in terms of which part of the brain is responsible for what action or feeling. And in terms of prejudices or biases, one of the parts of the human brain, which is called amygdala, which is an almond-shaped set of neurons located deep in the brain's medial temporal lobe, is critical for the acquisition, storage, and expression of classical fear conditioning, is one of the many parts of the brain responsible for rapidly detecting biologically relevant stimuli. Race-based differences in amygdala response sometimes correlates with implicit but not explicit to measures of racial bias. By understanding neurological facts regarding human psychology and the function of the brain, I learned prejudices or biases is part of human nature, but so as empathy, sympathy, and kindness towards one another. So I turned my focus to their culture, and I have learned the human's outlook is dependent on the experience and the adaptation of the individuals. Then I realized even though prejudices or biases are inherited phenomenon and it is impossible to completely get rid of, it can be minimized through practice and education of how illogical and untrue some behaviors such as racism is. Having learned that, I hit the street to experience firsthand what humans think, believe, or feel about prejudices and biases, which I've learned humans behave strangely, very different from one another, based on their views depending on the individual's membership of a social group, such as race, sex, class, nationality, religion, age, and many more groups. What that means is even though individuals are very different from each other, their association to their group immensely shape their viewpoints. Now please join me in my strange venture about race, prejudice, and biases. I'm back in the studio with Skepticula to share and discuss my experiences with you guys.
Hi everyone! So what did you learn?
Most humans are too lazy to think for themselves.
That's a bit harsh, don't you think?
Nope, I'm even being generous. Let me start with race. Humans came up with a set of visible physical differences and categories to separate the group they belong to from the rest. Since they separate each other in different physical differences, most visible difference in humans are possibly the skin color.
Why is there a skin color difference? I'm sorry, asking why is a stupid question. I should ask how there is a difference in skin color.
Skin color is due primarily to the presence of a pigment called melanin, which is controlled by at least 6 genes, which each individual differs in the number and size of melanin particles. The amount and the type of melanin determines the skin color.
What is the purpose of melanin?
Melanin's purpose is to protect the skin from the sun's harmful UV rays. Ultraviolet radiations can cause skin cancer, and melanin acts as a natural sunscreen by absorbing the UV rays. The more melanin your skin has, the darker your skin will be, and the more protection it will have against the UV rays.
So, how come there are different color skins everywhere?
That is due to a mass global migration of people during the last 500 years. Dark skin color was mostly concentrated in the southern hemisphere near the equator, and lighter color progressively increased farther away. In fact, most dark pigmented people lived within the 20 degrees of the equator. Most of the lighter pigmented people lived in the northern hemisphere north of 20 degrees latitude, where ultraviolet radiation is much less intense on average. Yet, believe it or not, many people base their judgment of a person with another skin color tone upon superstitious beliefs that the other people with different colors are somehow very different from their own. The prejudices and the biases towards the different looking so-called races of humans is called racism.
So, I assume those people who don't know about the biology of skin color are more prone to be racist, right?
Indeed, even in the past and before modern science, almost every group of people used to enslave another group based on their physical distinctions. And even their religions, which they like to think is a moral code, didn't have a problem with slavery. And even in some cases was mandated by their god or gods to enslave another group, tribe, or race.
Then how genetically different are races from each other?
In 2003, scientists completed the Human Genome Project, making it finally possible to examine human ancestry with genetics. Scientists have since tackled topics such as human migrations out of Africa and around the world.
Wow, hold on. Are you telling me all humans are originally from Africa? Shouldn't that fact make racism and nationalism obsolete?
That's right. According to genetics and fossil evidence, Homo sapiens, which is humans, evolved only in Africa between 100 to 200,000 years ago, with members of a branch left Africa about 90,000 years ago. Why do you think I said I'm being too generous by saying they're too lazy to think for themselves? They're also too lazy to learn the facts, and even when the facts are presented to them, if those facts contradict with their beliefs, such as their religion, the facts are dismissed by humans in order for them or the individual to not feel uncomfortable or to be challenged. They actually have an interesting confession by having a saying, ignorance is a bliss.
That is simply crazy.
That is human species for you. Anyway, as science of genetics shows us, there is not much of a difference between races, and the difference between individuals of one race is often greater than the difference between the so-called races.
Wow. So someone from the same race can be less fortunate than the rest in terms of intelligence or strength or looks, and is still favored over a person from another race who is superior?
Indeed, racism is cultural and emotional than fact-based or logical. It is the belief of somehow being more special than different-looking people, and the reason why it was so insane to me to witness what a big deal race was to humans. For example, in the United States, the cultural acceptable way to address a person with light skin pigmentation is Caucasian or white. But if they have very dark skin pigmentation, it's more polite to call them African American than to call them black.
But isn't African American someone who was born in Africa and later on in life became an American citizen? Kind of like Iranian American or Japanese American?
The actual correct pronunciation of the country is Iran. Whenever someone by mistake they call it Iran, I ask them where to. Anyway, That's what I thought at first, and it gets even more intellectually nonsensical. So calling someone white is okay. Black is still okay, but it's better to call them African American, even though they were born and raised in the United States and in most cases, many generations of being born in that country. The crazy thing is, if someone who their ancestors were from countries with very dark pigment colors, which are not even from Africa, such as Jamaica, are still called African Americans. It gets even funnier once we get to the other shades of color. For example, it is less okay to call someone brown, and technically people should know where the other person is coming from to address them properly, such as Middle Eastern for someone who's from Middle East, which itself is strange because Afghans and Pakistanis are called Middle Easterns, despite the fact that Afghanistan and Pakistan are not in Middle East and they are part of Central Asia. But what is crazier to me is when someone from North, Central, and South America are supposed to be called Hispanic, which the word Hispanic in Latin means from Spain or Spanish speakers. Spain was a country which conquered those regions and raped and enslaved those people and forced Catholicism, which was the Spain's religion at the time, upon them. And still is politically correct to call people from North, Central, and South America by that horrific reminder of their history. At least there is another terminology of Latino, which means the same thing. Finally, it is considered racist to call someone yellow, which is the supposed color of Asians, and by that they mean East Asians who have a different eye shape, and not Israelis, Iranians, Indians, or many more people who live in the continent of Asia. And another taboo color to mention is red, which is referred to almost extinct indigenous population of North American continent, who were massacred by the invasion of European settlers, and the new correct way of addressing them is now Native Americans compared to before, which was redskin. And because of that, there's a significant point of controversy to change the name of a football team, which is called Washington Redskins.
Hold on, shouldn't Native Americans be called Americans and Caucasians be called Euro-Americans if they refer to blacks as African Americans?
Indeed, my brother. I always wanted to use that. My brother. I just don't understand it. Like, the concepts that they come up with, which is okay to say, which is not. African American, the shade of color correctness, none of it makes sense to me. I don't know who came up with it. Interestingly, the same word as redskin in Farsi, which is the language of Iranians, is sorkhpust, equals the same meaning, yet in Farsi has no racist connotations whatsoever. So, one word in one language is racist, in another one is not. That's why I said I was blown away by the level of ignorance, prejudice, and biases which is even embedded in their language. For example, there is a disgustingly racist word which is referred to one of the shades of the color, and it's supposed to be used by only one shade of the color, and if anybody else used that word, it's supposed to be extremely racist.
Isn't that itself a racist behavior to claim it is okay for my race to use a word, but not okay for yours?
Indeed, but that's why I think most humans tend to show significant inability of grasping what is right and wrong when it comes to concepts such as racism and bigotry. And allow me to prove my point with two examples. First example is about Black American culture. Due to the fact that blacks in America have been systematically discriminated against for a very long time, since the time of slavery up until now, which thankfully there are some uprising against the injustice they still face in their daily lives. And we have to consider the fact that they're still less fortunate in almost every aspect of equality in the United States, which forced them to live and experience horrific and horrible situations and environments in the United States, which if I haven't seen those conditions firsthand myself, I wouldn't believe those areas and conditions exist in the richest country on the planet. Now, those horrible conditions, which include no proper education, therefore no hope for the future, combined with a strong influence of organized crime, created a culture which embraces the thug and criminal mentality, which is evident in many hip-hop or rap songs. Of course, I don't see a problem with art, as there are many wonderful artists which use music to express peace, love, and educate others about the sad and unpleasant truth of Black lives. The problem lies where a very high majority of artists promote human trafficking, murder, and violence. Yes, human trafficking, or being a pimp, which is one of the worst crimes and inhumane acts there is embraced. Yet almost no one criticized this horrific part of the Black American culture. And now a culture of crime and violence is being exported to the world from the country which is most influential country in the world where or when it comes to culture or export. Second example is hijab, which is the cover Muslim women have to wear, must in a way wear, which not wearing one in public in some countries, such as Saudi Arabia and Iran, is punishable by imprisonment or lashing. The weird, unbelievable reason that they have to actually wear hijab or cover themselves is to prevent men from getting turned on, which is a sin in Islam by seeing an uncovered woman. Therefore, preventing men to commit sin, women must wear hijab. Now, it is clear to see women in this situation are the victims. And Western or free countries should embrace the woman's freedom to not having to wear hijab. Yet now, or in the past couple of years, February 1st is the World Hijab Day, which instead of embracing women's right not to wear hijab, which millions of them must wear one in some other countries, from the fear of misogynistic countries, systems, and people, instead in free societies, this sexist act is celebrated. To sum it up, if a white guy criticizes hijab, which is criticizing an ideology, a sexist ideology, obviously that person is not criticizing women or any race. Still, that person in majority of the society is considered sexist or racist. Now I ask my fair audience, isn't holding back the criticism of a group of a people based on their color or sex itself a racist or sexist behavior? Sadly, when it comes to these matters, humans tend not to think rationally and independently from the group they belong to and blindly follow whatever they are told. And I can prove my point by telling you what the likelihood of a person's political view and religious belief is by pointing at a map, because it is that predictable.
Really? Let's try it then. What about here?
This is United States and mainly made of two political party views. And the high majority of the people are Christian.
How about this one?
China is majority communist, even though behavior-wise it is capitalist. And majority of the people's religion is Buddhism.
What about this one?
Oh, this one is way more interesting. This is Norway and has 9 political parties, which means much more diversity and healthier political system. They are way more advanced when it comes to political views from the rest of the world, similar to the other Scandinavian countries, and possibly because of that is majority non-believers.
Really? Are humans that gullible?
I think they are. If we can categorize their beliefs and views upon which border surrounds them, we can see the only difference is what influences them. And they tend to believe whatever information bombarding them, whether if it is religious or political. The mass majority of most societies believe what they're told.
I thought this show should have a bit of comedy and is supposed to be uplifting.
What do you mean? Humans create a nonsense concept called racism, in which they misjudge each other based on their physical appearances, upon which They mistreat each other and commit horrific acts such as genocide, slavery, and more. Yet they can't even think about it critically and don't allow intellectual conversations, therefore can't even grasp what act or whom is truly racist. What part of this you don't find funny? Maybe not haha funny, but I certainly find it funny in a way how a so-called intelligent species is often wrong when it comes to the concepts of racism, bigotry, and bias.
I have reached the conclusion that human prejudices and biases are due to their lack of knowledge and the desired ignorance towards scientific facts. I say desired because nowadays with the existence of the internet, they can learn about anything, and if they don't, it seems to me their ignorance is more of a choice than unfortunate circumstances of life.
Well, there you have it. With that sad note, we are going to end the show.
Indeed, such a sensitive topic as this requires much more in-depth talk, but sadly, due to our limited time, we are unable to get more in-depth. And with that unfortunate note, it is time to say goodbye.
We're at the end of our program. Thank you for watching. Please like and share our videos and subscribe to our channel, Agatan Foundation. And support us on our Patreon channel or with PayPal from our website, agatanfoundation.org, which you can find the link below in the description of the video. My name is Zonkar.
And I am Skeptecula.
We'll see you next time.